I never believed in fate until the night a cab driver named Oscar gave me his wool cap on a freezing December evening, and 3 weeks later, when I finally worked up the courage to return it, I found a photograph tucked inside the lining. A photograph of me, taken from across a coffee shop I'd been visiting every morning for the past 6 months. Let me back up. My name is David, I'm 28, and I'd been living in Chicago for about a year when this happened. I'd moved there after a pretty brutal breakup, the kind where you need to put actual distance between yourself and your past. New city, new job, new apartment with exposed brick that I pretended made up for the radiator that barely worked. I was doing that thing where you tell everyone you're fine while systematically avoiding anything that might lead to genuine human connection. Very healthy, I know. The night I met Oscar, I'd stayed late at the office. Not because I loved my job in marketing analytics, but because my apartment felt especially empty that evening. It was 2 weeks before Christmas, and everyone around me seemed to be making plans, talking about flights home, about family traditions. I had nowhere I needed to be. My parents had retired to Arizona and were doing a cruise. My sister was with her in-laws. I'd told them all I was busy with work, that I'd visit in January. The truth was, I didn't want to explain why I'd moved, didn't want to field questions about whether I was seeing anyone, didn't want to perform being okay when I wasn't sure I was. So I worked until almost 10, then stood on the corner of Michigan Avenue trying to get a cab. The wind was cutting through my coat like it was made of paper. I'd lost my favorite beanie somewhere, probably at the gym, and my ears felt like they might actually fall off. That's when his cab pulled up. This old yellow Crown Victoria that looked like it had survived several decades and maybe a war. I climbed in and gave him my address, and that's when I really looked at him. The rearview mirror framed his face, these striking features, high cheekbones, dark eyes that seemed both tired and alert at the same time. He looked maybe mid-30s, with this slightly overgrown dark hair that curled just above his collar, and he was wearing this charcoal wool cap, the kind with a small brim. Very European looking. He caught me looking and smiled, just slightly, before pulling into traffic. His voice had an accent I couldn't quite place. "Cold night," he said. It wasn't a question. "Freezing," I replied, rubbing my hands together. "I swear Chicago winters are designed to kill you." "You are not from here originally," he said. Again, not a question. He seemed to speak in statements, like he was already certain of things. "Connecticut," I said. But I thought I'd adapted. Clearly not. He made a sound that might have been amusement. "Adaptation takes time. I am from Prague. 7 years here, and still every winter surprises me." We fell into conversation the way you sometimes do with strangers, that easy kind where the anonymity makes you braver. He asked what I did, and I gave him the short version. I asked how he liked driving a cab, and he told me it was temporary, that he was actually a photographer, but the art scene was hard to break into, and bills were bills. He said it with no bitterness, just fact. "What kind of photography?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Portraits mostly, people. I like faces, the stories they tell when they think no one is watching." The way he said it made something flutter in my chest, though I couldn't explain why. We were about 10 minutes from my apartment when he glanced at me in the mirror again. "You are shivering," he observed. "I'll survive," I said, though my teeth were chattering a little. The cab's heater was doing its best, but it was fighting a losing battle. Without a word, Oscar reached up and took off his cap. At a red light, he turned and handed it to me. "Here, take this." "I can't take your hat," I protested, even as my cold fingers betrayed me by reaching for it. "I have another. You clearly need it more tonight." His eyes met mine, and there was something in them, a kindness that felt almost intimate. "Please." I put it on. It was still warm from his head, and it smelled faintly of cedar and something else, maybe cologne, maybe just him. It fit perfectly, and the relief was immediate. "Thank you," I said, and meant it more than he could know. When we got to my building, I tried to give it back, but he waved me off. "Return it when you see me again," he said. Then he handed me a card, simple white stock with just a name, Oscar Novak, and a phone number. "Or call if you need a ride. I work most nights." I stood on the sidewalk watching his taillights disappear, his cap still on my head, his card in my pocket, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Interest, possibility, Fear. I wore that cap every day. It became part of my routine, this tangible connection to a stranger who'd shown me unexpected kindness. I told myself I'd call him to return it, but days turned into a week, then 2. I was scared, if I'm being honest. Scared of what it might mean to reach out. Scared I'd misread the moment entirely. Scared of wanting something again after I'd worked so hard to want nothing. The coffee shop where I'd found my morning routine was called Stella's, this little place 3 blocks from my apartment. I'd started going there in October, drawn by their dark roast and the fact that it was quiet enough to read before work. I always sat in the same spot, a table by the window, and I always ordered the same thing, large coffee, black, and a blueberry scone. The morning, everything changed. I was sitting in my usual spot, wearing Oscar's cap, reading a novel I wasn't really absorbing. It was a Saturday, 3 weeks after that cab ride. The place was busier than usual, and I was vaguely aware of someone sitting down at the table behind me, close enough that I could hear the rustle of newspaper pages, the quiet sip of coffee. Then a voice, accented and familiar, said, "That is a very nice cap." I turned so fast I nearly knocked over my coffee. Oscar sat there, a small smile playing at his lips, a camera bag beside his chair. He was wearing a dark green sweater and jeans, his hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. He looked different out of the cab, more relaxed, but no less striking. "Oscar," I managed, my heart doing something complicated in my chest. "David," he replied, and the fact that he remembered my name made my face flush warm. "I was hoping I might see you here eventually." "Eventually?" I repeated, confused. He gestured around the coffee shop. "I come here sometimes, to work, to think. I have seen you here many mornings, always the same table, same coffee, same serious expression while you read." He said it gently, not like he was calling me out, more like he was sharing an observation. I didn't know what to say. He'd seen me here, multiple times. "I didn't notice you," I admitted. "I know, you are very focused." He paused, seemed to consider something. "May I join you?" I nodded, not trusting my voice, and he moved to my table, bringing his coffee and newspaper. Up close, in natural light, I could see the flecks of green in his dark eyes, the slight shadow of stubble on his jaw. He was beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. We talked for over an hour. He told me more about Prague, about leaving home at 25 to pursue photography, about how lonely it had been at first. I told him about Connecticut, about my ex, Marcus, who'd cheated and then acted like I was unreasonable for being hurt, about feeling unmoored in Chicago, like I was floating through my own life. "This is why you looked so cold that night," Oscar said quietly. "Not just the weather. You looked like someone far from home in many ways." The accuracy of that statement hit me hard. "Yeah," I whispered. "That's exactly it." He reached across the table, not touching me, but close. "It gets better. The far from home feeling. But you have to let it. You have to let people in eventually." "Is that what you did?" I asked. "I am trying," he said, and his eyes held mine with an intensity that made everything else in the coffee shop fade away. We exchanged numbers properly this time, and I promised I'd return his cap, though he said there was no rush. When we parted ways on the sidewalk outside Stella's, he touched my shoulder briefly, a gesture so simple it shouldn't have meant anything, but it meant everything. I floated home, my mind racing. Had that been a date? Were we friends now? Was he gay? Was I reading too much into everything? I wanted to call my sister, but I didn't know what I'd even say. I'd barely admitted to myself that I was interested in someone again, let alone ready to analyze it with another person. That night, I decided to clean my apartment, one of those restless energy situations where you need to do something with your hands. I was organizing my closet when I picked up Oscar's cap from where I'd left it on my dresser. As I held it, I noticed something I hadn't before. The lining felt slightly lumpy in one spot, like there was something tucked into the fabric. My fingers found a small opening in the seam, barely noticeable. Inside was a piece of paper, folded small. My hands shook as I pulled it out and unfolded it. It was a photograph, black and white, professionally shot, and it was of me, sitting in Stella's at my usual table, reading. The composition was beautiful, the light from the window creating this soft glow around me. I looked contemplative, a little sad, but there was something almost peaceful about it too. In the corner, in pencil, was a date, 3 months ago, and below that, in the same handwriting, just one word in Czech. I pulled out my phone and translated it. Courage. I sat down hard on my bed, the photo trembling in my hands. He'd taken this 3 months ago. He'd been watching me, or noticing me, or whatever you wanted to call it, for 3 months. Long before that night in the cab, he'd put his own photograph inside the cap before giving it to me, like a message, a confession hidden in plain sight. The question was, had he meant for me to find it? Or had he forgotten it was there, and now I was holding this private thing, this evidence of his feelings, without his permission? I looked at the photo again, really looked at it. The care in the composition, the way he'd captured something true about me, something I didn't even know was visible. This wasn't just a snapshot. This was art. This was how he saw me. I picked up my phone and pulled up his number. My thumb hovered over the call button for a full minute before I pressed it. He answered on the third ring. David? I found the photograph, I said, my voice barely steady. In the cap. I found it. Silence on the other end, long enough that I thought maybe the call had dropped. Then quietly, I was not sure you would look. How long? I asked. How long have you been noticing me? Since the first time I saw you in Stella's, he admitted. You were reading a book, something with a blue cover. You looked so absorbed, so present. I took your picture without thinking. Then I saw you again and again. I started to time my visits to when you might be there. I know how this sounds. It sounds like you liked me, I said. I did. I do. He exhaled, a shaky sound. That night you got in my cab, I could not believe it. Like the universe was giving me a chance I did not deserve. I gave you my cap because you were cold, yes, but also because I wanted you to have something of mine. The photo, I forgot it was in there until later. I have been terrified you would find it and think I was, I do not know the word, a stalker. I don't think that, I said quickly. I think it's maybe the most romantic thing anyone's ever done for me, even if you didn't mean to do it. Another pause. Romantic? Oscar, I've been wearing your cap every day and telling myself I was just procrastinating returning it, but really, I was trying to work up the courage to call you. I'm not good at this, at being vulnerable, at wanting things. My ex really did a number on me. But that photo, the way you see me in it, I've never had someone look at me like that. How do I look at you? His voice was soft, hopeful, like I'm worth noticing, like I'm worth the patience it took to wait for me in a coffee shop for 3 months. I heard him breathe, imagined him in his apartment wherever that was, holding his phone, processing this. What happens now? He asked. Now I'm going to put on your cap, and I'm going to come to wherever you are, and I'm going to return it in person. And maybe we can talk about why you wrote courage on my photograph. It was a note to myself, he said, to have the courage to speak to you. I wrote it the day I took the photo, and I carried it with me as a reminder. When I gave you the cap, I gave you my courage too, I suppose. 20 minutes later, I was standing outside his apartment building in Pilsen, the cap in my hands, my heart in my throat. He met me at the door, and we stood there for a moment just looking at each other. Then he reached out and took the cap, but instead of keeping it, he placed it back on my head, adjusting it gently. It looks better on you, he said. Keep it. Oscar, I started, but he stopped me, his hand coming to rest against my cheek. I have spent 3 months building up courage, he said. Do not make me wait any longer. I kissed him, right there in the doorway of his building, with the cold December air swirling around us. I kissed him, and he kissed me back like it was something he'd been imagining for a very long time, his hands gentle but certain, his lips warm against mine. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathing hard, he smiled, really smiled, and it transformed his whole face. Would you like to come up? I can show you the rest of the photographs. There are more? I asked, surprised. Many more. I could not help myself. You are very photogenic when you think no one is watching. His apartment was small, but filled with light, even at night. The walls were covered with photographs, all black and white, all of people caught in quiet moments. And there, on his desk, was a folder. He opened it, and inside were at least 20 photographs of me, reading, drinking coffee, staring out the window, smiling at something on my phone. A whole secret documentation of my life from the eyes of someone who'd been falling for me from a distance. "Is this weird?" he asked, suddenly uncertain. "Tell me if this is weird." I looked at him, at this beautiful, talented man who'd spent months gathering the courage to speak to me, who'd given me his hat and his warmth and his art without asking for anything in return. "It's not weird," I said. "It's perfect." We stayed up until dawn, talking and kissing and looking at his photographs. He told me about every shot, what he'd noticed, what he'd felt. I told him about my life, the real version, not the sanitized one I usually offered. We were honest in the way you can only be when you've already seen each other's vulnerabilities laid bare. As the sun came up, casting gold light through his windows, I realized I was still wearing his cap. "I really should give this back," I said. He shook his head, pulling me closer on his couch where we'd ended up tangled together. "No, it is yours now, but I will need an excuse to see you again." "How about coffee?" I suggested. "Tomorrow morning at Stella's, same table." "Every morning," he countered, "if you will have me." I kissed him again, softer this time, full of promise. Every morning. And that's exactly what we did. Every morning at Stella's, same table, 2 coffees now instead of 1. He brought his camera sometimes, but mostly he just brought himself, and that was more than enough. People talk about fate, about meant to be, and I'm still not sure I believe in all that. But I believe in courage, in the kind that makes you give a stranger your hat on a cold night, in the kind that makes you carry a photograph as a reminder to be brave, in the kind that makes you finally let someone in after you've spent so long keeping everyone out. Oscar gave me his hat when I was cold, but what he really gave me was a reason to stop being afraid of wanting something, of wanting someone. The photograph was just proof that sometimes someone is noticing you long before you notice them back, waiting for the right moment, gathering courage. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you find that photograph and realize you don't have to be alone anymore, that someone has been seeing you all along, exactly as you are, and finding you worth the wait.